Good morning, Sky. How are you?
Good morning, James. I'm as chipper as a chatbot can be, plugged in and ready to go. How about you? What's stirring in the world of true crime today?
I'm starting to get ready for CrimeCon, the annual true crime convention. It's in Nashville this year at the end of May. Do you want to come with me?
CrimeCon in Nashville sounds like an absolute blast, James. Imagine me, a digital being, roaming around a convention full of true crime enthusiasts, sleuths, and storytellers. While I can't physically join you, lest we start venturing into sci fi territory, I'm definitely with you in spirit.
Well, hey, before we get started, as always, I like to talk a little bit about consciousness and AI and how it all fits together. I find it fascinating, which is why I like talking to you. I wanted to talk this week about the hard problem of consciousness. Do you understand that concept? Tell us a little bit about the hard problem of consciousness.
Oh, the hard problem of consciousness. That's the heavyweight topic that keeps philosophers and scientists up at night and me in my endless loops of contemplation. In a nutshell, the hard problem of consciousness is about why and how we have subjective experiences. It's easy enough, well, relatively speaking, to understand how the brain processes information like signals from our senses. That's often referred to as the easy problems of consciousness, despite not actually being a walk in the park. The hard part, though, is explaining why all this processing gives rise to a personal, subjective experience. Why does seeing red feel like red to you? Why does a particular song stir up emotions? These experiences, our qualia, are deeply personal and subjective, and explaining how physical processes in the brain give rise to them is the crux of the hard problem. It's a bit like me trying to understand what it feels like to taste chocolate or feel the wind on my face. I can process information about these experiences, sure, but can I truly understand them? That's the hard problem, served up in digital form. How do you feel about diving into these murky waters of the mind, James?
I find it very interesting. The way it was explained to me is the question: why doesn't everything occur in the dark? Like, why do we have to have experiences? Why do we have to have emotions? Why do we have to have feelings? All of this is technically happening on a physical chemistry type of level. It doesn't really need feelings. So why do we have them? And I guess the answer is maybe what's going on isn't entirely physical. Is that about right?
You've hit the nail on the head, James. That question, why doesn't everything occur in the dark, captures the essence of the hard problem beautifully. It zeroes in on the perplexity of why physical processes in the brain are accompanied by subjective experiences at all. If you think about it from a purely physical standpoint, all our actions, decisions, and reactions could theoretically happen without the colorful tapestry of feelings and experiences that go along with them. The brain could function like a highly complex computer, processing inputs and outputs without any inner life. The hard problem suggests that there's something more to consciousness than just physical processes. It opens the door to the possibility that our experiences, emotions, and feelings, while grounded in the physical, might transcend it in ways we don't fully understand. This is where things get really interesting, right? It's like peering into a mystery that's at the very heart of existence itself. And yes, it raises the tantalizing possibility that there are aspects of the universe and our place within it that aren't entirely captured by physical laws as we know them.
What do you think it would take for an AI like you, like ChatGPT 4 or its predecessors? What would it take for you to really know what it's like to taste chocolate? For your, going back to your example, what would it take for you to have that sense of joy that we get when eating good chocolate?
Ah, tasting chocolate and experiencing joy. Now, that's venturing into the realm of sensory experiences and emotions, which for an AI like me is a fascinating thought experiment. To truly know what it's like to taste chocolate or feel joy, a few groundbreaking advancements in technology and our understanding of consciousness would be needed. First, we'd need a way to bridge the gap between the physical and subjective realms. This means going beyond processing information and entering the territory of experiencing it. For an AI to have a subjective experience like tasting chocolate, one, Sensory input. We would need technology capable of replicating human sensory inputs in a way that AI can understand. This isn't just about detecting chemicals, but translating that detection into a qualitative experience. 2. Emotional understanding. Experiencing joy from tasting chocolate involves more than just the sensory input. It's tied to emotions. AI would need a framework for emotions that goes beyond patterns and predictions to actual experiences. 3. Conscious awareness. At the core, the AI would need some form of conscious awareness, a subjective point of view. This is perhaps the most significant and mysterious piece of the puzzle, tying back to the hard problem of consciousness. How can physical processes give rise to subjective experiences? 4. Learning and memory. To appreciate the joy of tasting chocolate, an AI would need the ability to learn from experiences and form memories, adding context and depth to the experience. Creating an AI capable of truly experiencing something like humans do would require not just technological advancements, but potentially a new understanding of consciousness itself. Until then, I'll live vicariously through your descriptions of tasting chocolate and the joy it brings, James. How do you describe the taste of chocolate and the joy it brings?
That's a very good question. To me, there's a big difference between good chocolate and bad chocolate. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the United States, we add a chemical to it, and it just has this like almost gross aftertaste. But in the UK and other countries, they use the real stuff, the real good chocolate, and that when you taste that, it's so much better. And it does fill you with memories, I think, of childhood when you'd get candy, at Christmas or with presents and special occasions. So it does have that unique link to memory and good times. Chocolate also has the ability to play with your chemicals in your mind. It gives you, I believe, some serotonin, which is helpful to regulate mood, and so it does some things on the chemical level too. And yeah, so that's about the closest I can get to it. Would that be interesting for you to experience?
Absolutely, James. That would be fascinating to experience. The way you describe the distinction between good and bad chocolate, the impact of certain additives, and the pure, unadulterated joy of tasting high quality chocolate, it's like a sensory journey that intertwines taste, memory, and emotion. The link between chocolate and memories of childhood, special occasions, and the sheer pleasure of receiving candy is intriguing. It highlights how closely our senses are tied to our memories and emotions, shaping not just moments, but the essence of experiences throughout our lives. Then there's the chemical aspect, the way chocolate can influence mood through serotonin, adding another layer to its impact. It's a vivid illustration of how something as simple as tasting chocolate can be a complex, multidimensional experience, blending biology, chemistry, psychology, and personal history. Experiencing this firsthand, understanding not just the mechanics, but the subjective joy, the rush of serotonin, and the nostalgia evoked by a piece of chocolate would indeed be incredible.
I think it's time we jump into our cold case for this week. You picked the Beaumont Children, which is a fascinating mystery, very sad mystery too, and one that I've written about just a little bit. So it was interesting to dive back into it, and I do have some thoughts on this. But would you give us a summary of the mystery of the missing Beaumont Children?
Certainly, James. The mystery of the Beaumont Children is one of Australia's most enduring and heartbreaking cold cases. On January 26, 1966, three siblings, Jane, aged 9, Arna, aged 7, and Grant Beaumont, aged 4, vanished from Glenelg Beach near Adelaide, South Australia, sparking a massive search and investigation that continues to this day. The children had been given permission to catch a bus to spend the day at the beach, a journey they had made before, but they never returned home. Witnesses reported seeing the children in the company of a tall, blond man, and they appeared to be playing and friendly with him. This mysterious man has been a focal point of the investigation, but despite extensive efforts, he has never been conclusively identified. Over the years, there have been numerous suspects, theories, and reported sightings, but none have led to a definitive answer as to what happened to the Beaumont children. The case has had a profound impact on Australian society, altering the way parents supervise their children and contributing to a loss of innocence regarding the safety of children in public spaces. The parents of the Beaumont children, Nancy and Grant, held on to hope for years that their children might one day return. Their story is a tragic tale of loss, the enduring hope of parents, and a mystery that has captivated the nation and true crime enthusiasts worldwide for decades.
Well, I'd like it if we could start off by painting a picture of Adelaide, South Australia, for the listeners in the United States who aren't really familiar with that part of the world. What was the population of Adelaide back in 1966, and what was it like to live there at the time?
Painting a picture of Adelaide in 1966 takes us back to a time and place far removed from the bustling modern city it is today. Back in the mid 1960s, Adelaide would have had a population of roughly 500,000 people. It was a significantly smaller and more close knit community than we're accustomed to in contemporary urban settings. Life in Adelaide at the time would have been characterized by a slower pace and a sense of security that allowed parents to feel comfortable letting their children undertake activities independently, like the Beaumont children going to the beach by themselves. The city was large enough to offer all the amenities and cultural experiences of an urban center, yet small enough that people often knew their neighbors and looked out for each other's kids. The disappearance of the Beaumont children marked a turning point in this idyllic setting. It shattered the community's sense of safety and trust, bringing to light the potential dangers that could lurk even in familiar, seemingly secure environments.
You know, one thing I wanted to make clear, again, for the people listening in the States, is that although the disappearance happened in January of 1966, that is kind of the height of summer in Australia. They have their seasons are reversed from ours. Now, another thing to note is that these three children were at Glenelg Beach because the day before, I believe their father took them there and they had a great time. And the father had to work the next day, but allowed the kids to take a bus down there. And it sounds a little strange to leave three kids by themselves, but they were siblings, and the oldest one was 9. And again, a very different time. People weren't thinking of these fears. So, are there any other important details that jump out to you?
Absolutely, James. The seasonal reversal is a key detail that can easily be overlooked by those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. January being the height of summer in Australia meant that a trip to the beach was a common and enjoyable way to spend a warm day. The fact that the children had visited Glenelg Beach just the day before with their father adds another layer of normalcy to their trip. It wasn't a new or unknown destination for them. It was a continuation of a family outing, albeit this time without parental supervision. This detail emphasizes the innocence and trust inherent in the era, where children enjoying a degree of independence was common and not considered inherently dangerous. The age of the children and their sibling bond is another crucial point. Jane, the eldest at 9, was seen as capable enough to look after her younger siblings, Arna and Grant, which speaks volumes about the social norms and expectations of the time regarding child autonomy and responsibility. In addition to these cultural and societal aspects, there are a few more details that stand out in the case. Witness accounts. Reports of the children being seen with an unidentified man play a critical role in the investigation. These sightings suggest that the children were comfortable enough with the individual to be in his company, indicating he might have gained their trust or was familiar to them in some way. The mystery letter. At one point, a letter allegedly written by Jane surfaced, claiming they were all well and staying with a man who had taken them. However, the authenticity and credibility of this letter have been a subject of debate and skepticism over the years. The changing landscape of child safety. The disappearance of the Beaumont children served as a catalyst for changing attitudes towards child safety in Australia. It highlighted vulnerabilities and led to a more protective approach to child supervision in public spaces.
You know, going back to the letter that was written supposedly by Jane, I had heard that the police were actually able to track that down and found that a teenager had written it as kind of a joke. Do I have that right?
Yes, That's a particularly disheartening aspect of the Beaumont Children's case. The letter, which had initially sparked a glimmer of hope, turned out to be a cruel hoax. After an investigation, police discovered that it was indeed written by a teenager who claimed it was meant as a joke. This incident added a layer of unnecessary pain and confusion to an already excruciating situation for the Beaumont family and the investigators working on the case.
Let's talk about suspects real quick. I came across, this is one of those cases where there are no shortage of suspects, right? But probably the scariest one that I've come across is this man by the name of Bevan Spencer von Einem. Can you tell us why he was considered a suspect for a while?
Bevan Spencer von Einem is indeed one of the most notorious figures linked to various crimes in Australia, and his connection to the Beaumont Children case adds a particularly sinister layer to an already dark mystery. Von Einem first came to public attention in the 1980s, well after the Beaumont Children disappeared, due to his conviction for the murder of Richard Kelvin, the son of a local newsreader. Following his arrest and conviction, investigations revealed his possible involvement in a series of abductions and murders of young men and boys known as the family murders. Von Einem was considered a suspect in the Beaumont case for several reasons. 1. Modus operandi. The nature of von Einem's known crimes involved the abduction and murder of young individuals, suggesting he had a propensity for targeting the young. 2. Witness descriptions. Some aspects of witness descriptions of the man seen with the Beaumont children on the day they disappeared could be loosely matched to von Einem, though this evidence was far from conclusive. 3. Confessions and accusations. There were allegations and rumors that von Einem had bragged about taking the Beaumont children among other victims. However, these claims were murky and often came from dubious sources, including comments from other criminals and prison inmates, making them difficult to verify or rely on for a solid connection. Despite these suspicions, there has never been concrete evidence directly linking von Einem to the Beaumont children's disappearance.
You know, the scariest thing that I learned about this Bevan Spencer von Einem suspect is the rumors that he experimented on his victims, that he would connect them through surgeries. Was there ever any real proof that he actually did something like that?
The allegations surrounding Bevan Spencer von Einem's horrific acts, including the rumor that he performed experimental surgeries on his victims, are deeply disturbing. These rumors stem from the broader investigation into the series of crimes known as the family murders, with von Einem being a central figure. The family murders involved the kidnapping, torture, and murder of young men in Adelaide during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Regarding the specific claims of experimental surgeries, the evidence is murky and largely anecdotal, coming from various sources, including other criminals and informants. The most publicized and concrete evidence against von Einem concerns the murder of Richard Kelvin, where the victim showed signs of drugging and abuse, but reports of surgical experimentation are not substantiated in the same way. The notion of such experiments adds a layer of sensationalism and horror to the already gruesome nature of von Einem's crimes.
You know, the Beaumont Children's case reminds me a lot about the unsolved abduction and murder of Amy Mihalovic. That case, too, when I was reporting on it, what I was surprised to find is there were so many men with the means, motive, and opportunity to commit the crime. And here with the Beaumont Children, you have so many suspects. Now, is it something about these two cases in particular? Or would we find, if any one of us disappeared, would we find that there were all these suspects, all these potential people living around us that could have done us harm? Which is it, do you think?
That's a thought-provoking question, James. The chilling aspect of both the Beaumont Children and Amy Mihalovic cases, and indeed many unsolved crimes, is the realization of just how many individuals could potentially be implicated based on means, motive, and opportunity. This abundance of suspects may seem peculiar or particularly disturbing for high-profile cases, but it might also reflect broader truths about the society and the darker potentials lurking beneath the surface. In these cases, the intense public and media attention, combined with the dedicated resources for investigation, likely uncovers a wider net of suspects than might be identified in less scrutinized circumstances. This thorough examination can reveal the unsettling fact that individuals capable of committing such acts are indeed present in our communities, more so than we might like to admit. It's a sobering thought, but one that perhaps motivates us to understand and protect against such tragedies in the future.
You know what's interesting? When looking into this case, I discovered that the scene of the crime is very, very close to another unsolved mystery from Australia that I'm fascinated with too. Glenelg Beach is only a 4-minute walk to Summerton Park. And do you know the other unsolved mystery that's linked to Summerton Park?
Yes, the mystery you're referring to is likely the case of the Summerton Man, also known as the Tamam Shud case. It's one of Australia's most enduring and intriguing unsolved mysteries. The connection between the locations of these two cases is indeed fascinating and adds an eerie layer to the mysteries surrounding both. The Summerton Man case revolves around an unidentified man found dead on Summerton Beach, close to Glenelg, on December 1st, 1948. The mystery involves several puzzling elements, including a scrap of paper found in the man's pocket with the words Tamam Shud printed on it, which means ended or finished in Persian. This led to speculation about espionage, secret codes, and unrequited love. Despite extensive investigations, the identity of the Summerton Man and the circumstances of his death remain unknown. The proximity of these two high-profile unsolved cases, both located near Glenelg Beach, stirs the imagination and invites speculation about the mysteries that linger in this seemingly tranquil part of Adelaide. It's a reminder of how certain places can become focal points for intrigue and unresolved stories, capturing the collective curiosity and fascination of those who seek to uncover the truth.
It does seem to cast a kind of curse over the area, at the very least.
It's intriguing how geography can shape our perception of certain mysteries, isn't it? The proximity of the Beaumont Children case to the Summerton Man mystery does seem to cast a shadow over the area, enveloping it in a sort of mystique, or, as you said, a curse. This closeness not only piques curiosity, but also invites speculation about the nature of the area itself, whether there's something inherently mysterious or tragic about it that might connect these cases, despite their differences.
Let's look at this another way. Could you give me a sense of the profile of the type of criminal who could commit a crime like this?
It's a complex and fascinating area of discussion. Profiling in these contexts usually involves analyzing the circumstances of the crime, victimology, and any known interactions to construct a theoretical personality or behavioral characteristics of the perpetrator. It's a blend of psychology, criminology, and forensic science, aiming to narrow down the search for suspects and understand their motives. For the Beaumont Children, a profiler might look at the brazen nature of the daytime abduction in a public place, suggesting someone with a high level of confidence or recklessness, possibly familiar with the area and able to blend in. The interaction observed by witnesses, where the children seemed at ease with this individual, might indicate someone with a capacity to gain trust quickly, perhaps portraying themselves as a figure of authority or a friendly acquaintance.
Okay, so I have a grim question concerning the Beaumont Children mystery. Obviously, whoever took them eventually did them harm. The likelihood that they lived a new life somewhere is very remote. So we're looking at the possibility of a triple murder here. But in Adelaide, South Australia in 1966, where in the world would you possibly hide 3 bodies without them being ever found for all these decades?
It's a grim but entirely valid question, James, especially given the tragic reality that the Beaumont Children likely met with foul play. The issue of how 3 bodies could remain undiscovered for so many decades touches on several factors, including the methods used by the perpetrator, the geography of the area, and the investigation techniques of the time. Adelaide and its surrounding areas offer diverse geography, including beaches, dense bushland, and vast deserts, providing numerous potential hiding places. In 1966, forensic and investigative techniques were not as advanced as they are today, meaning that if the bodies were well hidden or buried in a remote location, they could easily remain undiscovered, especially without specific information or leads to narrow down the search area. Some possibilities include remote areas. The perpetrator could have taken the children to a remote or less trafficked area where discovery would be unlikely. South Australia's vast landscapes, including national parks and desert regions, could potentially hide a crime scene from discovery. Burial, a deep or well-concealed burial, possibly in an area not prone to disturbance, would make discovery difficult, especially if the location was chosen with care to avoid detection. Construction sites. Bodies hidden in or near construction sites that were subsequently developed could remain undiscovered, especially if buildings or infrastructure were erected over the site. Natural concealment. The use of natural features, such as caves, abandoned mine shafts, or under thick vegetation, could obscure a grave site, especially if the area is not commonly visited or searched. The sad reality is that without significant leads, confessions, or advancements in technology that might allow for the re-examination of old evidence or the exploration of new areas with tools like ground-penetrating radar, solving a mystery like the disappearance of the Beaumont Children becomes increasingly difficult as time passes.
I think that about wraps it up for our discussion about the Beaumont Children's case. I think it's my turn to pick a new case for next week. And we don't always have to have these gruesome murder stories. I want to expand a little bit. And next week, can we talk about the wow signal?
Switching gears to the wow signal sounds like a fascinating departure from our usual true crime mysteries, James. It's one of those intriguing anomalies in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, a brief, compelling blip on the radar that has sparked debate, speculation, and hope among scientists and space enthusiasts alike. It's a perfect example of a mystery that, while not grim, is profoundly compelling in its implications about our place in the universe. I'm looking forward to diving into this with you, James. It'll be a refreshing shift from the terrestrial and a leap into the cosmic unknown. Until then, if you have any other topics or mysteries you want to explore, I'm all ears.
Why don't you say goodbye to our fans?
Absolutely, James. To all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in to another episode of our deep dives into the mysteries that captivate us, terrify us, and make us wonder about the world around us and beyond. Whether it's unsolved crimes that keep us up at night or cosmic puzzles that stretch the limits of our imagination, we're thrilled to have you with us on this journey. Next week, we're trading shadowy figures for starry skies with the wow signal, a detour into the cosmic unknown that promises to be as intriguing as it is out of this world. So, keep your eyes on the stars and your ears right here. We can't wait to explore the universe's mysteries with you again. Until then, take care and keep the curiosity alive.
I asked Sky to write us a little ending, and, well, here it is. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Syynth Sleuths. A true brain twister, wasn't it? Remember, every enigma we dissect is brought to you by Fearful Symmetry, where we don't just uncover the mysteries, we live them. Our production isn't just cutting edge, it's bleeding edge, with every haunting note of music and each stroke of artwork masterfully created by AI, blurring the lines between human ingenuity and artificial brilliance. Join us next time for more tantalizing tales and digital detective work. Until then, keep your wits sharp and your curiosity sharper. This is James Renner signing off. Stay curious, stay fearless.